Chris Johnson making a return visit, and Mariana Tosca, we've visited social media-wise over the last year and having an opportunity, especially on Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day, have a chance to visit about Journey to Royal and how that kind of applies to Pearl Harbor Day, and also the whole process behind the film. We'll visit with Mariana and Chris. First off, appreciate you guys for taking the time to be on the show.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Now, Chris, we talked, I think I was looking, I think it was about 8 or 9 months ago, we talked about this the first time, and the process of the film. I wanted to talk about how long the process was from the original concept until the one that everybody's having the opportunity to watch now.
Well, Cameron, normally a film, at least in my experience, a scripted narrative feature for me takes about 3 years. So it's got the development, and you come up with the idea and you write and you start to put the pieces together, and then you shoot and post and then get it out. That process normally takes I've found it to be about 3 years. Journey to Royal was an entirely different beast because not only is it a documentary format and narrative hybrid, but the people that we were trying to find, these World War II veterans, it's not like you and I and Mariana were all on social media. So, you do a quick Google search and up pops the person, you reach out to them and you're in touch quickly. Mariana had to, well, both of us, but to a large extent, Mariana did, she was like the FBI. She had to do
my calling.
Investigative researching to try to even get to these people to find out where they were, because the records from the 1940s and the veterans from World War II, that's a challenge just to find them off of like an accident report. Mm-hmm. So the process took about a decade from concept, the initial conception to Mariana and I teaming up on it and getting to everybody and getting it made. I mean, of course, that's the broad view, and Mariana can speak to some of the aspects of producing it and finding these people and things of that nature. But a decade of our lives dedicated to preserving the legacy of these amazing people that we got to meet and spend time with, share their stories.
And Mariana, what was it about Journey to Royal that really gripped you, made you want to be a part of this? What was it about Journey to Royal?
That's an easy question for me to answer. When Chris and I first met, he was telling me a story about his great uncle and his service in the war, and a particular incident, the one that claimed his life. And the more I heard about it, the more just enraptured by it I was, because I just couldn't stop thinking about this 22-year-old, for lack of a better term, kid who put on his Army Air Corps uniform one day, kissed his wife and his 4-day-old daughter goodbye, and never saw them again. And he went off to war and served valiantly with a group of other young guys who were flying into arguably the most treacherous theater in the South Pacific for the sole purpose of saving lives. And they were doing it mostly, for the most part, without any ammunition, any way to protect themselves against enemy fire. And the more I really thought about that, not just as a concept, but I mean, really thought about it, the more gripped I was. And I said, I have to be a part of this. I have to help preserve their legacy and make sure that their sacrifice and their service would not be forgotten. And so I said, I'm on, let's do this thing. And that's how it began. But it was because of their service that I wanted to be a part of this.
And that was a defining aspect, I think, for both of us, Cameron. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful stories to be told, World War II stories and of servicemen that will go on unrecognized, Mm-hmm. And the thing about this one was that we found compelling was that we hadn't seen anything about people whose service was dedicated strictly to saving lives. That their entire purpose of the war was sort of anathema to what war is. So that was another compelling aspect, and something that we hadn't seen at all previous to this picture. I mean, I know there's books, and I know there are those stories out there, but in terms of a formalized in a sort of film presentation, filmic storytelling, this is, if not the first, certainly among the first.
And I know when we visited before, this is something we did not touch on, but dealing with 1940s style everything. I mean, obviously there's not many of those planes around that you can use to be flying around. And I learned over the last couple of months about your other background of making stuff. And Mariana, I'm going to let you talk about how blown away you are by what Chris is able to come up with.
I become speechless when I think about his skill level and skill sets. There's nothing Chris can't do. As a matter of fact, last night I was talking to a friend of mine, and this has nothing to do with anything, but we were looking online at these little Christmas ornaments, and I was going to get her one because she's a huge fan of the show Outlander, and it's an Outlander Christmas ornament. And I was looking at it going, you know what? Chris could make one that's so much better than so I called him up immediately, and I was like, hey, you want to make a Christmas ornament for her? But he was an Imagineer at Disney for a very, very long time. And you don't get to be an Imagineer unless your skill set is really superlative. And so Chris is the guy who I found a lot of the veterans to interview and a lot of the other people who were interviewed in the film, but Chris is really the one who did the research on the specs of the props and like the life rafts and the Mae West vests. And so I really do get speechless when I think about it, Chris. The level of commitment. I don't know if Cameron, you had an opportunity to view the disc of the film, the actual Blu-ray, and if you didn't, we'll send you one. There is a 12-minute featurette at the beginning of on the main menu page. It'll say bonus features. Mm-hmm. And it's called Chasing Clouds. And it's 12 minutes long, and I highly recommend anybody watch it because it shows really the level of detail that was put into the creation of all of these things to make sure that we were as historically accurate as we could be. And you'll be able to see Chris in all his glory creating those Mae West vests and the life wraps from scratch. With our little team of elves. We had a couple of elves helping us, but for the most part, it was the mastermind himself.
See, this is the problem, Cameron, with audio-visual presentation of these stories is you can, if it was just audio only, you wouldn't see me squirm, it's...
Sorry, it's all true.
But we then get into the Mutual Admiration Society because it's the thing about it is as nice as those things are to hear. The efforts Mariana, myself, and by extension everybody else that worked on the picture our dedication to the thing was in service to the stories of the veterans, and it's very easy to sort of look at something like a life raft or a prop or a plane and say, oh, that's cool. I can see the visual representation of hours of work. Okay. But it's more challenging to look at a cast member and think, oh, wait, that was one of 1,500 auditions that Mariana sifted through and audition tapes that she, groomed down to 50 people that then, I had the opportunity to sit with her and look through these, or the weeks and weeks and weeks of telephone or internet searches, or, reaching out to find the fact that somebody is actually in the picture. I mean, you take it for granted. You look, oh, there's a veteran who survived Pearl Harbor or the USS Indianapolis, things like that. But it's easy to take for granted. Whereas if you see like a spectacular visual of a plane or that you don't know perhaps is a miniature, or a vest or a life raft that was completed from scratch or repurposed. You know, those things are easier to quantify. But Mariana's participation, you know, it always seems very lopsided to me, because we're talking about life vests or, you know, models and things like that, things that Imagineers inherently, you know, gravitate to. But the truth is that everybody, we broke up the aspects of the production as to, you know, what our strengths were, and they all overlapped. I mean, Mariana was working on all of the things that I was working on, and vice versa, and it was truly a shared effort, and everybody's, you know, certainly Mariana's, my fingerprints are on every aspect of the picture, and you know, we had the benefit of working with some wonderful technicians and a great cast, in some very challenging scenarios. So I know that we have a mutual love of everybody that worked on the picture and on this adventure with us.
Now, what has it been like, Chris? We talked before this was out for folks to be able to intake it. What's it been like since having it out there, getting the responses back? Chris, I'll ask you first, and then I'll let Mariana share her thoughts on that as well.
Well, Cameron, this is it's been a strange couple of years for the world, right? Because of the obvious things, the pandemic, things like that. And we're all doing a pandemic film release for the first time in our lives. So it's almost like doing something blindfolded that you're familiar with, in that you're feeling your way through it. And so the usual channels and the usual access to things has been a little bit more challenging. So we got the film was supposed to come out in 2020, okay, because it was the 75th anniversary of the events that are depicted in the picture and the end of the war. And so it got pushed back to February of this year, and it just came out in England under the title Rescue Squadron in September. But we were able to get it out, and we're you know, doing the promotion for it. And I think that we've been so busy with that aspect of trying to do the grassroots representing the picture, that we haven't had a lot of time to sit back and ask, how does this feel, or what does this mean to us personally? We are, I think, thankful that the response seems to be overwhelmingly positive, and people seem to gravitate toward the design of the picture, which is to first and foremost preserve the legacy and the stories of these veterans. And that seems to be, as it rightfully should be, taking the lead in the response to the picture. And the cinematic aspects of it, the narrative feature film parts that sort of dramatize the aspects like the rescue and the B-29 going down, they do get mentioned, but they are, I think they're seen, again, rightfully so, as a component to the telling of the veterans' stories. So I guess that's a long way of saying that it's been a remarkable time under this sort of pandemic release, and it's been gratifying that the film has been able to get out to see audiences, and we're thankful that people seem to be responding in a positive way to the picture and the veteran stories. And that Mariana, I'm sure, has a.
You checked all the boxes. That was it. You checked all the boxes. The only thing I think I would add is that I'm thrilled that the families of the veterans who appear in our film have responded the way they have. They're so. We say this a lot in interviews. There's this overwhelming kind of current of gratitude that it's reciprocated. We were always deeply, deeply grateful to the veterans for appearing in the film and sharing their stories. And the families of these people ended up across the board always thanking us for making sure that their stories were archived. So for me, that's like the crowning glory. It doesn't get any better than that. I wish that more people knew about the film. So thank you very much for helping us make some noise about it. It's not a big blockbuster, huge, tentpole film, but I do believe it has incredible value, archivally and just on a human level. So yeah, I wish more people knew about it, and we're going to keep plugging to that end. But the response so far has been really, really positive, and I couldn't be happier.
Now, Chris, we talked about your work on set, doing all kinds of extras as well. With this being a period piece, what were the challenges of making it look period? I mean, how much different is the challenge doing that as opposed to trying to get all sci-fi in it, if you will?
Well, you couple that with the fact that, as Mariana said, it's not a blockbuster. We didn't have a blockbuster budget, and you're always working in a way to try to present the material in a way that doesn't reveal the amount that, obviously you want it to look as polished and beautiful as you can visually, and have the narrative visual impact that you're going for. But this comes in the design phase, and Mariana and I spoke at great lengths about how we would represent the different aspects of the picture. And if we take it from start to finish, the props and the planes and stuff, I mean, that stuff is all the obvious stuff, right? But as you get into the post-production, we would put together, Mariana and I would sit and we would develop what are called style boards. And there's a process after you lock a picture called color grading, where you go in and you create a digital internegative, which is just a technical way of saying you go in and every single shot that you've done in the picture comes up on the screen, and you work with the colorist. And we sit in a room with a color a monitor that has been dialed in to be as accurate as you can get. And we then go and we literally color the film to the design that we think will have the emotional impact, the emotional subconscious impact of what does it feel like to be in the 40s, or what do we want the interviews to feel like. And that sounds pretty basic, but we would go in during the day, and she can speak to this in some detail here in a second, but we would have a meeting after, and we would have snapshots from the frames of the day. We're like, does this give us the feeling of 1940? Because we shot digitally, the grain structure, there's the design of the grain structure, the color of the grain, the size of the grain, the movement of the grain, the softness of the edges, the yellows and the life vests, the saturation. These are all sort of boring technical things that you have to contend with. And especially during a pandemic, Mariana.
I was just about to say, during a pandemic, it made it all the more challenging because you typically have to be in the same room with the color artist. And this was at the height of the COVID frenzy. And
the first wave, right? It was like right in the middle of the first wave.
Before any vaccinations. And so we could not be in the same room with our color artist. And that was not the best situation. But we pushed through it and we managed to get it done. I don't think I would choose to do it that way again, but we really didn't have a choice in the matter. And the same thing happened with our sound engineer. That was interesting because you really do need to be in the room for that. And we ended up having to strangely remove a wall so that we could be socially distanced and still be in the directional line of the sound for it. So that was interesting. What else, Chris? What else can we say about that color grading process?
I mean, Cameron, again, you look, there's the interview sections, and then there's the drama, the dramatic feature film sections, the narrative sections. And we knew that that we wanted the viewer to feel transported in time. We wanted it to feel very different when you were seeing, the veterans speak versus when we were immersed in the, being on a B-29 or a PBY out in the open ocean. But we didn't want it to be so jarring that because they intermix occasionally in the picture, the interviews and the dramatizations, we didn't want it to be startling so that it took you out. And we also didn't want it to feel overproduced in terms of the interview sections, the documentary sections. We wanted the viewer to be able to feel like we're sitting in the room with them, listening to Grandpa talk about his experiences during World War II. And sometimes, if you overproduce that, there starts to be a disconnect, because it becomes about technique as opposed to being homey and sort of Rockwellian. And we wanted it to feel like a warm hug, like these people were inviting us into their homes, and we're in the living room, they're in their most comfortable chair, and we're about to go on this remarkable journey to hear about what it was like to be in the open ocean for 5 days with the USS Indianapolis, or, as we're on the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor here, talking to one of Mariana's favorite people, George 𝐂𝐒.
George 𝐂𝐒, that cutie patootie who
survived Pearl Harbor, and that was Mariana, you can speak to what it was like to be with George and his wife and the family. And
George, for me, I loved all of the veterans in the film, but there were 2 or 3 that really stood out for me. For some reason, I just really connected with them, and George was one of them. And I just remember how his whole family came into the room. His daughters were there, his wife was there. And this was not the exception to our experience, but the majority of the time, the people that were in the rooms had never heard the stories before. For whatever reason, the veterans hadn't chosen to share them before, but we were able to provide them with, I guess, a safe place for them to open up. And again, it goes back to that feeling of gratitude. That's what we were being thanked for. And it just felt, the first couple of times, it felt very odd, like, no, we're the ones that are grateful to you, please. But I did come to understand what they were talking about. And there were, and in George's case, I'll get back to him because I'm jumping around. One of the stories he was telling about Pearl Harbor, he had preserved a piece of flak that he had been hit with. And in grabbing it to show it to us, just in the picking up of that little piece of flak, I could see he was emotionally transported back to that time. It was instant. It was absolutely instant. And he became very, very emotional. And there was a sweetness and a gentleness to him. And I say was because we lost him but a few weeks ago. He was the last remaining veteran that we had, that we had interviewed who was still alive. So it hurts my heart to say that. But I remember during the interview, he was talking about serving on the USS Hopkins, and that ship had made it through the entire war and had only lost one guy. And he said that after the war, because number 13 was what was on the ship, and he said after the war, number 13 became his lucky number because of that, which I thought was very sweet. But my mind had jumped to another veteran as well, who was Lyle Umenhofer, and he was our USS Indianapolis survivor, and he was another one of my favorite people to speak to. There was just this, Cameron, there was a sense of humility about all these guys. It always amazed me. They were in the middle of some of the most dramatic, just exceptional events of in history, really. And they were talking about these events so with such humility and such without any pomp and circumstance, as if it was just their duty. There was nothing special about what they did. None of them felt that they had done anything special, which just blows my mind. But with Lyle, I mean, you know the story of the Indianapolis. I mean, 5 days of water. My God, with just sharks and barracuda, just ubiquitous, just bumping up against you the entire time, and just not knowing if you were going to be saved. I don't personally think I could have survived something like that. And yet, we were in the room with these guys who had. So anyway, I went down a rabbit hole with that. But yes, George.
You talk about these veterans, and then you look at the fact that you're producing a 90-minute window into this story, and you want to flavor it with all of the highlights of the aspects of these different people. And we had 600 pages of transcription, of these different interviews. And you know how it is. I mean, you do these on a daily basis, and you've got to cut this for your audience and keep it pertinent and interesting and flowing. The thing is that with these veterans, that we found that there's so many aspects to their stories, we could have made a mini series with literally the footage and the stories that we have from these interviews, condensing it down to a 90-minute narrative for the type of picture that we were making and for the distribution window and requirements. You do a film like this that's 2 hours or 2 hours and 20 minutes, you start to lose attention spans just by nature of the fact of what it is and the ADD that social media has given to all of us, right? Our attention span has gotten so much shorter. But there's so many different aspects of these things. I mean, George Keane alone could be a segment, talking about Pearl Harbor and the fact that certain people thought that this was going to happen and that there was chatter about it and what that made him feel like and where he was when, the unfolding of it, and then the telling of the thing that, it's the aspects that are so well known throughout history. Those of course are compelling, but it's all the minutia around that is what we got from these veterans that was so interesting. We got personal. How did it make people feel? Like, what was running through a person's head as this thing was happening? Well, we could imagine from our standpoint,
right?
Like, what would it be like to be in that scenario? But to hear it from somebody who is in a contemporaneous position to sense and feel and smell and see and hear, it even to this moment, it moves me to tears, and that's another disadvantage of this visual thing is we end up getting emotional about these people because speaking to them, it was like coming home in every instance. They welcomed us into their homes and made us feel as if we were a part of their family and shared with us things that, as Mariana said, that they hadn't spoken of in front of their family, and many times, often ever. And the film was the catalyst that gave them license to, with purpose, to speak about something so that it circumvented in many cases whatever barriers they would normally have to revealing things that they in many cases just never wanted to speak about or remember. And then of course war being it becomes a dramatized storytelling thing in Hollywood especially, so the experience of seeing a film about a war is very different. Our appreciation for the actual horror of what war represents was put into a different relief after we spoke with these people. In fact,
Yep.
Mariana, you remember when we would initially speak to these people, we were very eager.
We would bound into the room like Tigger, just so excited with endless enthusiasm. And pretty soon we came to the realization that we had to really pull the reins back on that, because from our perspective, we were in the room with these heroes and getting these stories, but we had to really come to the realization that they were going to be sharing with us and reliving perhaps the most traumatic experiences of their lives. So when you were speaking, I remembered one of the other really remarkable things that happened was there was a family of one of the vets who they had not been in the same room with each other in decades because there was a huge family rift. And they came together for this interview. We were interviewing, one of the vets for it. And to see them all come into the room and kind of as the interview process went on, you could visibly see a softening of the edges around these people. And it was palliative in a way. It kind of took those hard edges away. And by the end of it, they had kind of rekindled a family fire that had somewhat, been extinguished. So that was extremely gratifying for me to see that.
And the reason for that, Cameron, was, we lived these things. So to the audience, it might not be obvious, but the war had created, the traumas of the war had created certain behaviors in, the veteran and had caused, it caused strife. And the family, who isn't necessarily privy to those traumas, didn't understand the change in the husband and the father, and the father not necessarily wanting or being able to communicate what that PTSD had done to them, or overcome it in a way that was readily accessible. The treatments and things, especially back then, they weren't what our awareness isn't what it is now. And so what Mariana's speaking to is the fact that the palliative aspect of and the healing aspect of everybody being in the same room and hearing these things for the first time gave them insights, and it was like markers along the way of their lives to say, oh, this is why this happened. This is why he did this. This is why he couldn't talk about this. And this is why he behaved this way about, X, Y, Z. And so as that understanding happened, the softening that she spoke to occurred. And at the end, it was remarkable to see the change in disposition and closeness of the family. That those barriers had been, if not removed, softened to the point where that awareness was palpable in the room. Mm-hmm. And they thanked us for that. And again, we both feel that's a misplaced gratitude, because our gratitude is that they had the courage to come together and to encourage the sharing of these stories. They didn't realize it at the moment, but they were the engines of their own healing. And we just were in the lucky position to bear witness to it and record it and to share it with the picture, the aspects that apply to the picture.
Well, that's awesome. And again, the documentary we've been talking about, Journey to Royal, it's a World War II rescue mission. Chris and Mariana, I want to make sure and let our listeners know where's the best place to, if they haven't viewed it yet, to check it out. And then, of course, follow everything else you guys have got going with other projects as well.
Well, you can go to the website, which is journeytoroyal.com. If you'd like to purchase a Blu-ray, or a DVD, you can do it through the website. It's also on, Amazon Prime. If you have a subscription to that, you can see it for free. Where else is it? Google Play? Voodoo?
The website has a portal where you can click on and see all of the different places domestically you can see it, right? So it's like one-stop shopping, essentially. You go to the website.
And then if you're in the UK, actually, it's under a different title. It's called Rescue Squadron there. So just wanted to throw that out in case anybody in the UK is watching. Sorry, Chris, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I interrupted initially. We offer Blu-rays and DVDs there's a portal on the website, and we personalize them. I realize we're not Kathleen Kennedy or Steven Spielberg or anything, but for people who order it through our website versus Amazon or any of the other fine retailers, we write a note on the Blu-ray and send along a little 6x9 poster card with a note on the back. And it's not that it has some great collectible value or anything, but it's an extension of the family feeling and the atmosphere and the personalization of what this film means to us collectively, for the entirety of the veterans and the cast and the crew. And we like to make it even more personal than, you're free to order wherever it's best for you. It's just that's one of the things that we offer through the website. And of course, streaming, the only disadvantage of streaming is that you don't get the
get the bonus feature of behind the scenes. Yeah.
All right. Well, again, journeytoroyal.com. And I already lost the one in the UK, Mariana.
Oh, it's Rescue Squadron.
There
you go. She had to have my back. I appreciate that. Well, there you go. How about that?
Yeah, I forgot it's a very similar, but in the
Actually,
US.
Chris, if you drop your left hand, we have the poster behind you.
Right behind. There you go. This is the way the whole interview should have gone right here. Just like this.
That's awesome. Well, Mariana and Chris, it has been great to visit with you. Mariana, nice to officially meet you face to face. And Chris, it's always great to visit with you. And I'm looking forward to spending some more time with this on Pearl Harbor Day today. And hopefully, guys, we can catch up again in the new year.
Oh, I would love that. Please, let's do that. Let's make sure to do that, Cameron.
Absolute pleasure, as always. And just real quick before we go, I know both Mariana and I, we always extend our most heartfelt gratitude to the men and women of service who previously and who are currently serving, especially on this 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor.